before we get into this whole thing, I wrote down / asked Perplexity to tell me some of the recent team sales. Because this is my message. Again, I narrowly agree that this is good for you Laker fans out there. I do.
Bring it.
I've been through the hype cycle of team sales. It is remarkably consistent where some new fancy billionaire muckety muck buys a team and there's all this hype about, oh my God, the owner, the devil we know sucks. So this is fantastic. What a great day for you. What a great day for your team. And it just keeps ending in disappointment or worse. I'm going to read down the list of teams sold since the Steve Ballmer sale happened. That was a situation that was probably archetypal where you can say they got their stadium, but they went, oh my God, the Clippers are going to be, and the Clippers were just, for the most part, the Clippers. All right. So the Sacramento Kings, people forget that Vivek was really hyped. And
the Joe Lacob ownership tree.
Yeah, the Joe Lacob ownership tree. Malcolm Gladwell talking about how he completely souped up his little girls basketball team by running the full court press. Right. This man was clearly an analytical genius. I will say the Milwaukee Bucks, it did end in the championship, so we can say that one. Job well done right there in 2014. The Atlanta Hawks, meh. The Houston Rockets, the Tillman Fertitta, that one, not great. I don't know if we hyped Tillman, though. I don't know what we knew about Tillman back in the day. The Brooklyn Nets to Joe Tsai, hyped, hasn't really gone anywhere. And it's the second one of them because Prokhorov was the big international muckety muck that was going to make them unbeatable back in the day. The Utah Jazz to Ryan Smith. Oh, he's a tech wizard. This is going to be amazing. Here comes Danny Ainge. I mean, we can say TBD, I guess, but it's not been fantastic. The Phoenix Suns, oh my God, Sarver, he's the worst of the worst. Once we get this enthusiastic Ishbia, oh God, they're going to be, and they're already good. They're already in the finals. Can you imagine? Well, we can imagine. It's a complete clown show. Hasn't gone great. Charlotte Hornets TBD, I would say, although it's not like anything's great so far. The Dallas Mavericks, man, that one went quickly sideways, I would say.
Listen, as a Lakers fan, I feel like that one's okay.
That one, they're playing the long game over there. And now we've got these recent sales, and this is a topic unto itself, Daman, which is just why so many sales. The Timberwolves to A-Rod, we'll see. The Celtics, right after winning the championship, we'll see. And the Los Angeles Lakers to Mark Walter of the Los Angeles Dodgers ownership group. Here we are. So I'm just saying.
Yeah. So
don't get too big for your britches. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Listen, obviously you're just listing this off Perplexity. There's no context given. There's no understanding of the situation. So I think before we get into the specifics about that, I do think the timing is interesting. Specifically for Jeannie Buss, her two closest friends or whatever confidants in the ownership ranks were Wick Grossbeck and Mark Cuban. And they both sold. And, certainly I'm sure this entire time, she's at least, been listening to them or understanding where they're coming from. Mark Cuban's valuation was certainly, it seems low. That whole sale still kind of befuddles me. There's been no real reason. Like Mark Cuban's given 5 or 6 different reasons why he needed to sell, and none of them really add up. No. And I love the conversations that you and Glass have had about the fact that Mark Cuban sold it to like the biggest political rival that he possibly could find. I'm amused by that. That has nothing to do with this, but
I've got 2 hobbies. Hobby 1, inveighing against the evil of Donald Trump. Hobby 2, selling my most prized asset to Trump's biggest supporter. Those are my 2 hobbies.
Great. And then Wick, the Celtics, I think the valuation was very good for the Celtics and certainly probably helped like set the number for the Lakers now.
Oh, and did you hear that patronizing tone? Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Celtics
cute.
Fans?
About a half. That's fair. And there's the only thing about timing that has sort of a ticking time bomb aspect of this for the Lakers is they signed this massive TV rights deal, local TV rights deal, in 2012. It was a 20-year deal through 2032, and it was a 20-year, $3 billion deal. At that time, it was seen as astronomical, but they're the Lakers, you get it. Now, with the RSNs basically, you know, all bankrupted, that deal goes from astronomical to, oh my God, what a mistake this was for Time Warner, which is who they signed it with. So their next deal was going to be nowhere near this. And for people listening who don't really know, the national TV money that the NBA gets split evenly across all the teams, so all 30 teams. So the Lakers didn't have an inherent advantage there, but their local TV deal, that's all theirs. And that was a massive $150 million a year advantage when other teams like, you know, the Memphis Grizzlies and Pelicans and stuff like that, they basically get no money from RSNs. And so when you talk about what advantages the Lakers have had over smaller markets, financially speaking, for a family in the Buss family that weren't cash rich, that relied on the cash flow, that was the single greatest advantage. And 2032, for a transaction like this, hey, that's coming up. Like, you got to start thinking about what are we going to do after, because that next deal was going to be nowhere near that. And so in 2021, Mark Walter bought the minority share for the Lakers from AEG, who previously had that chunk. The key part of that chunk was that they had a first right of refusal. So AEG maintained that. And then when Mark Walter bought that share, that stuck. So that continued on. And so it was likely that if the Lakers were going to sell, there was no indication of when that would happen. And it was pretty shocking when the news came. Like, it was kind of a out of nowhere news. It's funny. We had like the Luka news, and then a few months later we had this news, and I kind of felt the same both times of just complete shock.
Yeah.
And so I kind of losing my train of thought here.
Let me jump in. Okay, well, then I can jump in and say that I think that might actually help explain why this came out of nowhere. It didn't leak to a lot of people. Yeah. There's skepticism. There are a lot of conspiracy theorists. I got hit up from people in other sports saying, how does this not leak? Well, I don't know the nitty gritty of the contract details, but it is a bit of an inside job. And they might have right of first refusal, so this could just go very quickly. It could be, look, here's my exploding offer, unless you want to take this thing to auction, and you might not get $10 billion, but I have $10 billion. That is a more than respectable offer, and it could be that simple. Like, $10 billion, fine, done, deal. You've got the first right to really bid on this thing. And that's how it can go quick. So I get it. And interesting about this, by the way, this is another thing. This is what reminds me of Succession. So the way Dr. Jerry Buss set up the trust that manages the team is that Jeannie was the governor, the controlling partner, but the 6 Buss siblings split everything equally. So 16.67%, whatever. And what was interesting about the structure, so Jeannie Buss doesn't have kids, but that's actually not relevant, because the way the deal was structured was that if any of the children passed away, it's not that person's share was going to go down to the next of kin for that person. No, the shares was simply just dispersed to the remaining siblings. So there was like a last man standing situation where if the siblings wanted to just ride it out and wait until the last living person could have taken 100% ownership, if they just written it out. So like Joey and Jesse Buss were the younger siblings. They could have waited 30, 40 years until all the other siblings passed away, and they would have had, complete control. What do you think the odds are that at least one of the Buss children idly thought about killing one of the other Busses? What do you think the odds of that are?
There's, if I was like the young Buss brother, I would encourage like Jeannie Buss to take expensive and like really, really exotic vacations, and just like, hey, you should go on small planes all the time, and you should skydive. And you should,
have you ever thought about
live your life?
Wingsuiting. No, just to up your odds, to really analytically crack this, just get them in vacations together, the other siblings in one spot where something can maybe happen. And that is a weird taunting kind of setup.
Yeah.
Such an intriguing family. And part of me is sad about this. It's the old NBA dying. People called the Lakers the biggest mom and pop shop, and that was part of the romance of it all when you're watching Winning Time, that this is one man's vision in Dr. Buss, and it's a family, and they're just running it out of an office. And now this is the sterilized private equity NBA that just has less romance to it. And not only does it have less romance, this is where my settle down juice that I'm offering you factors in, because I understand the argument. I understand this idea of, oh my God, Walter's coming over from the Dodgers. They really turbocharge the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the class of the MLB. And I just don't know if some of those advantages can represent themselves in the NBA environment to that degree. Here's my take on ownership. I do think it's important. I don't think it's unimportant, but I think in a way it helps you establish a baseline of competence. Good ownership does, or smart ownership does. But then the NBA really just seems to come down to a few high variance decisions and figures, and that determines success. That it's not altogether the light years philosophy of the Warriors. It's that they established a baseline of competence and then just got this run of good fortune. And so, yes, I think that it's probably good, but probably good might end up getting you more or less where you're at with maybe a center.
So look, I will tell you this. You're right. Any kind of change, big change like this, inherently there's risk. There's downside potential. Absolutely. In some of the cases you listed, like, I'm not going to pretend there wasn't excitement about Vivek Ranadive taking over in Sacramento. That was a big, Vivek's building a stadium. He's staying in Sacramento. He was part of the Warriors ownership group, and so he can bring some of that know-how and knowledge and stuff like that. And so I acknowledge that. And there's plenty of like easily identifiable areas. And I will say one of those is the romance of the Lakers and that brand halo effect that carried on from Dr. Jerry Buss. If the Buss family is no longer fully in control, and, there's reports that Jeannie Buss is going to be the governor still and still run things, but we know how that goes. Like, practically speaking, I don't see that. Like I, in my mind, Mark Walter is now the owner of the Lakers, even though Jeannie Buss is the governor, the controlling partner, whatever. And so that is a downside, right?
I don't want to interrupt the train of thought too much, but there was a funny thing in the chat BCC that one of my goons, as it were, there's why are we doing this with Mark Cuban and now Buss, of this lie of you're going to stick on? And one of them said, honey, mom is leaving dad for the tennis instructor. Dad will still be acting husband for the tennis instructor for the first few years while mom lives at the tennis instructor's house. I don't know why we're doing this thing. I don't know why they say they're going to stay on. It's very strange, but continue, sir.
No, but there is a through line from Dr. Buss, and it stayed in the family, and there was a charm to that. And I don't know if that was the reason LeBron joined, but LeBron certainly joined because there was a brand and there was something, and that is connected to that ethos. And there is a risk of losing that and becoming this corporate, like you said, like a hedge fund kind of entity where they're more cold-blooded about how they run things. And I would say like the Clippers, for example, they're run in a very, you can point to everything and say, oh, they're doing this very well, but there's a lack of soul, heart and soul that the Lakers kind of operate with. What I will say is...
Or the Clippers, you mean, yeah.
Yeah, the Clippers.
Yeah.
So what I will say is, and look, I'm not a reporter. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of people and talk to a lot of people just loving the Lakers. And I will say this is not a new sentiment that the Lakers fans felt like it was time for fresh ownership. Now, it was never like laid out very clearly like, oh, we wish that the Dodgers ownership invests a share, and then if later they can buy a majority. It was never like that. It was more just like, man, we need new ownership. We need new ownership. And the reason for that, and it is interesting, Pete Zayas of Laker Film Room just published a podcast today, actually. And a little bit background on Pete. He worked in the Lakers organization for a few years, and he was just a content creator, and he, he's one of the best. He's like the best Lakers analyst. I trust him for everything. and he's a good friend of mine. And he talked about this publicly today, so I feel comfortable talking about it publicly today. And he said on the podcast today that if he had been given one wish as a Laker fan, one wish after seeing the organization, he would not have wished for a superstar player. He would not have wished for a number 1 draft pick. He would have wished for new ownership. And I don't want to overstate that in the sense of I don't want it to denigrate or say that Jeannie was terrible or that, you know, the Buss family was terrible. I think that Jeannie was very well intentioned. I think that she was and remains an excellent steward and face of the organization.
This is a hell of a dance to do, but continue.
Listen, I'm telling you. So, but the reason
is a balancing act. This is like when the guy walked across the Twin Towers.
Fair enough.
I want to hear the rest of it. I want to hear the rest of it.
So, but there was a insular lack of dynamic kind of dynamicism in the organization. And going back to Jeannie Buss being owner, when Dr. Jerry Buss passed away, he handed the team off to Jeannie as the controlling governor, and he put basketball in Jim Buss, another sibling, and said, "You're going to run the basketball, Jeannie's going to run the business." He dictated that, and they kept that going. Jim Buss was not a competent basketball mind. Let's just leave it at that. We don't need to go through specific
drafting of Andrew Bynum. That was his.
And that was his. By the way, a lot of funny parallels between how Jim Buss kind of is with his draft picks and Joe Lacob, but that's a different topic for a different day.
Interesting.
But I will say, like, so Jim Buss is running basketball for a few years. He publicly comes out feeling pressures and says, "I guarantee we will be in the conference finals within like 2 years," or something like that. It was completely nonsensical. The team was in really bad shape after Kobe left, and there was no way that was going to happen. And so, long story short, the deadline comes and goes, or it was a little bit before the deadline, but it was clear the Lakers weren't going to make the playoffs. And Jeannie fires Jim Buss. And the reason this is relevant is, first of all, firing your brother, pretty crazy. Yeah. Like, that's probably not easy. Who does she hire? She brings in Magic Johnson, who she's known forever and is like a brother figure to her, and to run basketball operations, to be like the vice president or president. And the general manager she hires is Rob Pelinka, Kobe Bryant's agent, again, connected to the franchise for many, many years. Her closest confidants in the organization, her best friend, Linda Rambis, and Linda Rambis's husband, Kurt Rambis. And so this is her like childhood best, or not maybe not a childhood, but very early on friend, Linda Rambis. Linda married to Kurt Rambis. That is her basketball, like that is the basketball mind of the Lakers. That's it. Yeah. And so you look at how long those relationships have been, how insular, and it's just, and by the way, Rob Pelinka, Magic Johnson, never run basketball team before. And those are the people she chose because she trusted them. Now, to defend her, and I don't want to psychoanalyze too much, but this is like a pet theory of mine that I never really talk about, but I find it fascinating. Dr. Jerry Buss, best owner of all time. Probably not the best dad or husband. Probably not. And I can imagine her being grown up in that environment, not really trusting a lot of people. And when she's finally put in a position to be in charge, her dad doesn't trust her to appoint the basketball. She puts Jim Buss in charge. And when she's finally given the opportunity to bring in her own people, the only people she trusts are not people from the outside world. It's the only people that she's ever been close to. And so I understand it. And so I understand where that's coming from. But that leads to bad outcomes. And the organization within was severely understaffed, severely lacking in so many distinct areas that is where the optimism from change comes. And we can talk about that more.